a shovel in hand, she roams the universe, exploring every land, no map, no reverse. Oh, dig a 420, curious Canuck. Answers on your mind, never getting stuck. Riding waves of stars through the cosmic sea, finding who we are in the galaxy. She's got questions to ask and a fire that won't die, unraveling each task under the sky. Oh, dig a 420, curious Canuck. Answers on your mind, never getting stuck. Riding waves of stars through the cosmic sea, finding who we are in the galaxy. She's got questions to ask and a fire that won't die, unraveling each task under the sky. Oh, dig a 420, curious Canuck. Answers on your mind, never getting stuck.
Because, hello, hello. How are you? How is everyone today? Oh, what on earth is going on here? Very strange. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm clicking in the wrong spot, doing the wrong thing, and so it's not working. Par for the course, right? All right. Good morning, everyone. First, Rusty Grammar. Nice to see you, Rusty. How's it doing? Yeah, let's wait a few minutes, let everyone roll in. This is chapter 2 of the new book. So this is kind of exciting. It's most definitely not Behold a Pale Horse. I can tell you that for sure. There's like no Discord at all, or sorry, no Discord. I'm hearing myself. There is no correlation and there is no tinfoil in this book between this one and Behold a Pale Horse. Sorry about that. All of a sudden, all of my windows opened up and they weren't supposed to open up. And now things are playing that shouldn't be playing. Let's see. Can I get this to work now? 1, 2, 3. Everything's good. Rusty's first over there on Rumble as well, and he's flossing. Thank you very much for the flossing. Chris, good to see you. Good morning. How's everyone doing? I am let's see. Yeah. Sorry, everything is kind of going off all of a sudden. I clicked one wrong button and you know how that works. Good news is, as soon as the doesn't seem to make any sense at all, but as soon as my big order of cat food comes into the store, I'm going to go and pick it up. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I need to buy there, including the tech stuff I need to finish fixing my PC. And crossing fingers, if I do, or when I do that, we can finish fixing the PC and then I won't have any of this robotic herky-jerky kind of camera stuff. So crossing fingers for me. Hopefully it'll come in the next week. Anyways, yeah. Oh, that feels so much better. I've been struggling to make coffee this morning. It's brutal. It's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, is I make coffee. And I went and I made coffee, and about 20 minutes later, there was about that much in the pot. And I thought, that's taken, it's a little slow, but okay. Come back another 20 minutes later, it's still only that much. And I realized that it's not heating up, not doing anything. So I finally managed to get everything together, and I did a slow pour. So I've got one pot that's already cooling of coffee, of a slow pour. But at least I didn't have to have Bushwhackers coffee. I thought I was going to have to do that. Very glad I don't have to. You never get, sorry, you never get all the coffee grounds out with Bushwhackers coffee. Okay, so, oh, sorry. What if I do that? And I'm sorry, it's really bothering me that my cameras are all, are going all crazy. If I didn't have to look at myself, then it wouldn't bother me and you guys could just, deal. But I have to see it too, and it's really bothering me. So let's see if we can do this. I've got it down. Nothing is open except the Rumble chat and StreamYard. So hopefully, and whatever it's trying to get me to do. There we go. Hopefully this will work a little bit better. Still looks really herky-jerky. I am so sorry. Rusty's saying, I'm glad you read. You can read. I'm not sure how to do math stuff. Yeah, I can't do math stuff either, so I'm very lucky I read. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to stop the camera and just give it a few minutes to kind of figure it. Oh, I know. I forgot my trick. This has been working, and I don't know why it's working, but it's working. So for some reason, if I have Task Manager actually open, the PC doesn't do its weird things near as much. Do you drink it black? No, I like my coffee sweet and creamy. Not super creamy, actually. I come from a long line of Canadians. I'm a double kind of girl. Okay, let's see. Is that any better? It's still a little jerky, but that's the best I'm going to get, I think. So double cream, double sugar. Although I prefer Coffee Mate, and I only need one of those. It doesn't upset my tummy. I drink so much coffee, I couldn't actually use actual half and half in every cup, or my stomach would be a mess. But yeah, I do need the coffee. It's just brain doesn't function quite right if it's not in the system. And usually by this time, I'd have had a couple of cups at least. Hello, Shenny. You're working but listening. Okay. I've got some excited cats. So there you go. Hello, lady. How you doing? It's good to see you. My girls are putting on a little show in the background, so you guys can all enjoy that. So I was waiting for the numbers to start going up, and StreamYard says there's only 2 of us, but there's more than 2 of you in chat. So I'm going to guess that you guys are actually rolling in and StreamYard's just being itself. Last week we did both of the, yes, hello, Cynthia. They are, I don't know where they've gone to now. They're very excitable this morning, and I didn't get a chance to play with them. So that's the problem with starting early in the morning. I don't get to give them their time before the stream starts. So, but anyways, we last week we read both prefaces, the original and the preface from the 2013 edition of this book, as well as Chapter 1 in Part 1, Part 1 being Losses. Chapter 1 is the titular story, The Man Who Thought His Wife Was a Hat. It's really very interesting because, as he said in the preface, oh no, Bobby's a hat. Oh, I like the new avatar. I really like the new avatar, Bobby. So much better than that weird yellow face. That thing was not cool. Kind of gives me creeps. Oof. If you didn't know, like maybe a foot behind this screen, And right over here is the kitchen window. So they'll go tearing up here so they can jump up on the windowsill and watch the people, because they can watch them from the window in the front door. Then they run around. They can watch them here, or if they're going all the way around, they can catch them out the front window. So sometimes it's a racetrack around here. So you're 25% French Canadian, Rusty. All right. Well, that's why I seem to feel an affinity with you, even if it's the French Canadian. I've got some French Canadian. Well, I've got French in me too. My Norwegian ancestry stopped in France for a bit before heading over and finally making it out here. But my ancestry didn't want to just stop when they got to the ground. They kept going, and my near relatives actually built a lot of BC. I've got familial connection to a lot of different areas of BC. It's pretty awesome. Bobby says, I'm not French Canadian. Thank goodness I'm normal. You're not normal, but thank goodness you're not French Acadian. So yeah. Oh, look, now StreamYard says it has 3 people watching. So that's me and 2 of you. You guys can decide which 2. The rest of you don't exist. So anyways, I'm not going to rely on that. I'm just going to hope that you guys are rolling in time. You're normal and we're the weirdos. Oh no, I knew. Aren't we all weirdos? That's why we're friends, Bobby. 50% German and 25% Scandinavian. Nice, Rusty. I don't know percentages. I haven't done any DNA thing. I just know that my dad's family can trace it back through that route. But my mom's adopted, so Lord knows what I've got from her end. So this pretty standard for Minnesota boys. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, this book, I knew it was a bunch of case studies. I didn't really know much more than that. I didn't know much more than the fact that he's going to be writing about mental diseases or illnesses. It's very interesting. The way he described it is there's a lot of studies and research gone into disease in the left hemisphere of the brain, but not a whole lot into the right side or the creative side of the brain. So these are case studies of people who have damage or disease in the right side of their brain, which has affected their creative, imaginative abilities. So the first case study, Dr. P, let's see. Okay. So he basically sums it up here. It was also evident that his visual memories of people, even from long before the accident, were severely impaired. There was a memory of conduct, perhaps a mannerism, but not visual appearance or face. Similarly, it appeared when he was questioned closely that he no longer had visual images in his dreams. Thus, as with Dr. P, it was not just visual perception, but visual imagination and memory, the fundamental powers of visual representation, which were essentially damaged in this patient. And a final humorous point, where Dr. P might mistake his wife for a hat, McRae's patient, also unable to recognize his wife, needed her to identify herself by a visual marker, by a conspicuous article of clothing, such as a large hat. So it's it's very interesting. Their mind doesn't see things anymore. May see shapes, or particular, like a big nose, or a bright shirt, something like that. But they don't actually see faces. They don't actually see faces. If they were looking at me on the screen right now, at least in the case of Dr. P, he wouldn't see me. He'd see a shape, but he wouldn't be able to see my face, and wouldn't be able to describe what's in the background, because he doesn't see items as items anymore. So I found that really, really interesting. The next book, or the next story, is called The Lost Mariner. I did a little bit of reading, but not a whole lot, because I try to keep it fresh, so I don't know what's going to happen, so we can all kind of learn together. So I peeked a little bit, but not too much. Bobby says, you better not say I deserve to be in that book. I would never say you deserve to be in that book. I think you can see stuff. You send me pictures all the time. We'll see if maybe later. I'm thinking, it's just very interesting. I've always suffered with depression and anxiety, thanks to my health issues. So I'm hoping that maybe in reading about injuries and disease of the right hand side of the brain, perhaps I might find something that could help me understand myself a little bit better, right? So I'm not looking for my friends in here. I'm looking for myself in here. Rusty says, yeah, I don't like to brag about it. Quebec was their degen. They are. They really are. They don't like me, for example, over here in BC on the West Coast. I went through school in French immersion, so everything was in French. I did not take English until we started taking like English class. My math, my science, history, everything was taught to me in French. But they taught us the proper French because Quebec French is a lot of slang, and a lot of swearing. So the people from Quebec don't like me speaking my French because I speak like a person from France, not like a person from Quebec. And apparently people from France sound very snobbish to people from Quebec. I don't know. I've never heard the two of them speaking to each other, so I've never seen that interaction. But yeah, I not that my French is any good anymore. I understand it when people speak it to me, and I can understand it if I read it, but I can't pull my my mind doesn't let me pull out names and words of things in English. There's no way my brain can pull out the right word in French on the spot when I need it. Just doesn't work anymore. But I learned everything in French once upon a time, and it screwed me up royally when I did go into English because all of my terminology was in French, and I ended up failing my math 10 class. It's the only time I had to go to summer school was math 10 because I switched from French immersion to English in private school, and I had to relearn all the terms. So I kept mixing everything up. Hello again, lady. Back from your phone call? Okay. Bobby says, good news. People from Quebec sound stupid to the rest of us. Oh, good. Bobby says, proper French is sharper. Quebec French is open and lazy sounding. Hi, Fresh from Annette. Good to see you. Yeah, Quebec French is very, very slangy and very very loose, and it reminds me more of like New Orleans French than proper French. Honestly, it's got that kind of swingy, soft syrupiness to it, you know. Mind you, they make Quebec, or they make maple syrup, so maybe that's part of it. They eat too much. Anyways, we're about 20 minutes in, so no matter how few people StreamYard says is here, I know there's more than that just in the chat. So it's time to start. Again, we are reading chapter 2 of The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And this one's called The Lost Mariner. Let's get a little water first, eh? take that back. New Orleans French is a special brand of weird. It is. It's they're different for sure, but I think Quebec French more closely resembles New Orleans French. Um, just in the because proper French is, you're right. It's sharper. It's clipped. You know, it's it's not so soft and swingy. I don't know. That's all I can. I'm thinking of textures, and I'm trying to describe a language. So that's not going to work for me, I don't think. Rusty says, I only know American English and Spanish. British English is obnoxious. I can't handle the accent. I lose my shit. I'm a sucker for accents. One of the things that drew me to my ex-husband long ago, we exed a decade or more. Oh, yeah, long more than a decade ago now. Either which way, ages ago, but he was British. And that was one of the things that drew me to him. You know, in a BC town full of longshoremen and truck drivers. And all of a sudden, this dude is speaking in this lovely, sexy accent. Like, yeah, I couldn't help myself. I had to talk to the guy. Boo hoa tu. What is boo hoa tu? Exactly, Acadian French. Sounds like y'all men dicks. Sounds like y'all men dicks. I'm not sure what you mean there, but I don't understand what Bobby means by bohatua either. Oi, mate, you got a license for that bottle of water? I can't do the bottle of water near as well. Hi, John. now we're doing extremely bad accents. On that note, before or not just embarrass myself, but before I anger anyone else and their lovely accents, I'm going to get to it. Oh, thank you, Dom, coming in with a $5 Rumble rant. I have no idea how much I made off of YouTube last week. Oh, no, I don't make any money off of YouTube. There's no YouTube money at all. I don't know what I'm making off of Rumble because the first payout check that I requested still hasn't arrived. So I'm not going to do anything else until that first check arrives. It's feel free, keep doing that. I appreciate the Rumble rants. It'll collect up, but I'm not going to try and get another payout until the first one shows up. I don't want to be trying to chase down one while the other one's in the mail too. That just makes everything confusing. But I make $0 off of YouTube. And I think that might be the point you're trying to make. I do, however, I've made a little bit of money on Buy Me a Coffee, thanks in large part to you and MJ. And there's a few others you guys came in for the holiday season and stuff. That was really lovely. You guys actually helped me be able to put together enough money to go to acupuncture, which I never thought I'd ever be able to do. It's supposed to be brilliant for fibro and some of my other stuff, but I never thought I'd be able to afford to do it. So you guys, with your Buy Me a Coffees and Rumble rants, you guys have helped me so much that I can afford to do it. So I went and I did the first one 2 days ago, but that was a whole nother thing. I ended up in the emergency ward for 7 hours in emergency because my pupils are different sizes. Don't worry, my head's not gonna explode or nothing. Apparently there's something wrong with the eyeball itself. So, we're checking it out. But in the meantime, I didn't really get to enjoy the after effects of the acupuncture. I was stuck hanging out in a Canadian ER for 7 hours. So I'll let you know how the next one goes. It's in 2 weeks, I think. I do have my pain shots next week. Yes, I think it's next week. Now I'm worried. My that appointment came up a week before I thought it would, which is just as well because apparently my eyes are doing weird things. So good to get it checked out. Yeah, so Monday I do have my pain doctor. I should be able to do my Monday stream. I don't think I'm getting the spinal shot. If I do, I'll put it in the community area. But it should be okay for Monday's stream. And then the following week, I get to go to the acupuncture again, and then I'll let you guys know just how wonderful it was. All right, I will catch up. Indeed, says Bobby. Their accents are extremely bad. No, I meant my accent was extremely bad. D what? Good to see you. Make money, girl. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I'm thoroughly impressed to be able to afford these treatments. It's really awesome. It probably doesn't sound like a whole lot for most people, but for me, it's opening up a whole nother avenue of treatment that I wasn't able to access before. So yeah, it's fabulous and I appreciate it. Hello, Brian. What's up, digga? I won't tell you my response out loud, but you know what I'm thinking. John saying hello over in Rumble as well. Hello, hello. Fresh from an app says, y'all don't, that's why you steal? Don't, why we steal? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I don't know what we're stealing. Especially in Odyssey, there is no money. I don't know what an Odyssey is, fresh from an app. Catch me stealing. It's an addiction. I don't know, but I'm not picking up what you're laying down. Maybe it's too early in the morning, but I'm not getting it. If you wanted to, hi, Bulls Deep, say you're liking it. Thank you so much. If you want to speak a little clearer, you can go over to Rumble and they let you say what you want to say. You don't have to play with the word games. So you can definitely go over and do that. But I'm not picking up what you're laying down right now, bub. Tom is saying to John, good job. I've been trying to get Digger to focus more on Rumble. Well, for me, I stream to 2 platforms, and you know, they're both good at different things. If you want more free speech, definitely head over to the Rumble. It's not 100% free speech, but it's a heck of a lot better. On that note, I am really going to take a sip of water and then start reading the book because we're half an hour in now. All right. Chapter 2, The Lost Mariner. You have to begin to lose your memory, if only in bits and pieces, to realize that memory is what makes our lives. Life without memory is no life at all. Now, our memory is our coherence, our reason, our feeling, even our action. Without it, we are nothing. I can only wait for the final amnesia, the one that can erase an entire life, as it did my mother's. And that's a quote from Louis Brunel. And he was a doctor, I believe, that was talked about earlier in the preface. Brian saying, I wish the Rumble app wasn't dog shit. It's getting better. It's getting better. There's pros and cons to both platforms. But yeah, Rumble's getting better. And YouTube's getting worse. And at some point, we're going to just take the not as good Rumble over the better in some ways YouTube, just because YouTube is asshole. So yeah. Miserable now messing with an addict coming here with an attitude. Okay. Well, we're just going to read our book. And if you want to hang out and listen, sorry, there's a deer in the yard. Anyway, sorry, squirrel. Yeah, if you want to hang out, we're going to read the book. You can hang out too. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. You mad here if they not addicts the way all they want from you. Don't understand. John is saying getting people to Rumble is good, but to get people here, Digger, is doing it right. Yeah. Thank you, John. I think that's kind of what you got to do is YouTube is where all the people are. So that's where you have to grab your audience. Then you know, can get them. One of the things I forgot to do, but now I've closed everything, so I can't do, is pin the link to the Rumble just in case YouTube decides it doesn't like what I'm reading, because that happens. So, yeah, so definitely head over to the Rumble if we disappear. I'll still be going there, and they are much better at the free speech. But YouTube's where the people are, so it's kind of a, you know, catch-22. Why are you questioning Brian's sciency-ness? Kamloops knows. That's a town in the Okanagan for sure. It's a nice town actually, but it's all hills. It's ridiculous. It's literally at the top of one of the main the Rockies kind of come through and split the lower mainland from the rest of BC. And Merritt is at the very, very top of the pass. And then Kamloops is just a little lower down on the opposite side. And it's all steep, steep hills. It's brutal if you have to walk and you live in that area. Everything is uphill. The old adage that I had to walk uphill both ways in the snow, you know, with bare feet, blah, 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 blah. It really is true in Kamloops. It seems like no matter where you want to go, you have to walk up the hill to get there. It's a brutal place. It's pretty. I love stopping there for a lunch or something, but I would never ever live out there. The hills are just too brutal. And John saying the Rumble app's gotten way better. It has. From what I've seen on the tablet, it seems to do better now. Oh, wait a minute. That's, oh, shoot. And no, I can't do that either. Okay, you guys, we're taking you on a very quick trip here. Crossing fingers. Oh, you need me to, because I'm in incognito. Okay. Oh, maybe not. It decided it. No. Do. I'm sorry, guys. You keep talking. Yeah, Bobby says, Brian, he is a chemist. What's up? That's what I was wondering. What do you need a scientist for? I wonder. There we go. Okay. Customize. Do. What do we want to do? Not that one. Not that one. Oh, goodness. Where is it? Oh, no, John. I can't figure out where to go to make you the mod. Oh, wait a minute. I can do it from the actual. I can do it in the stream, right? Here, there we go. Haha. That'll do it. Wait a minute. Why can't I make him a mod? It's my channel. There we go. I had to make it full screen in order to add you as a moderator. There we go. There we go. I didn't realize. I just assumed you were. Damn it. There. You too. I got you. And where are we? Because there's, yeah, the two of you should have already been mods already. And I'm not sure. I know I probably I just missed you guys when I was doing the big old mod everyone thing. So there we go. But there we go. So now I've got the modding should be better because John and D White, you should have been already. And Brian, I don't know why I didn't. I just, I wasn't thinking because I don't think about that. But I'm actually streaming 3 days a week on my own now, as well as the time with Jenny on the weekends. So I guess I better do things a little bit better. Now the mod rules is don't do anything. Don't do anything at all, unless it's a sex bot or one of those other bots, or the trolls with the the ridiculous spamming. But otherwise, don't do nothing. And drop links if you feel like dropping links, because that's lovely. There we go. So yeah, don't worry too much, Brian. No responsibilities. Bobby, because I do not understand. Oh, I missed a bit. YouTube was censoring you and you're a mod. For Pete's sakes. All right. Yeah, Rusty, I figured you'd probably been around the block over here before. Exactly, Rusty. On Rumble, you don't even really need mods, because the trolls tend to show up on the YouTube anyway. Don't do nothing, do everything. Oh, Brian, you're the only sex spot allowed on my channel, okay? You're the only one, though. No more. No more. But we'll allow it. You're my token, so why not, right? Okay, let's do this. Oh, got to put that up there so I can see everything. If it wants to do that, thank you. Okay, that's better. Now I'm looking at you guys right above the camera, or right below the camera. So it's almost like I'm looking at you. Thank you. Dropping links. What is Mighty? Oh, Mighty's a whole nother beast. Mighty is a special being. I don't think there's been a proper, I don't think we've quite defined what Mighty is yet. But he's not a sex bot. It's way different than a sex bot. He doesn't need programming to do the sexy things to people. A whole bot. I like that. Mighty might be a whole bot. I could go for that. That that sounds closer than sex bot anyways. All right, no more interruptions. Everyone's happy, everyone's mod, everyone's good. All right. The Lost Mariner, Chapter 2. This moving and frightening segment in Bunel's recently translated memoirs raises fundamental questions: clinical, practical, existential, and philosophical. Philosophical. I can't say that. Why can't I say that word? Clinical, practical, existential, and philosophy. Okay, you guys know. I don't know why I can't read that word. Okay. This moving and frightening segment in Brunel's recently translated memoirs raises fundamental questions: clinical, practical, existential, philosophical. Thank you. What sort of life, if any, what sort of world, what sort of a self can be preserved in a man who has lost the greater part of his memory and, with this, his past and his moorings in time? It immediately made me think of a patient of mine in whom these questions are precisely exemplified. Charming, intelligent, memoryless Jimmy G, who was admitted to our home for the aged near New York City early in 1975, with a cryptic transfer note saying, helpless, demented, confused, and disoriented. Jimmy was a fine-looking man, with a curly bush of gray hair, a healthy and handsome 49-year-old. That's not cool. He's in the home for the aged. I was expecting him to be 60, 80, like 40. Jeez. Jimmy was a fine-looking man, with a curly bush of gray hair, a healthy and handsome 49-year-old. He was cheerful, friendly, and warm. "Hiya, Doc," he said. "Nice morning. Do I take this chair here?" He was a genial soul, very ready to talk and to answer any questions I asked him. He told me his name and birth date and the name of the little town in Connecticut where he was born. He described it in affectionate detail, even drew me a map. He spoke of the houses where his family had lived. He remembered their phone numbers still. He spoke of school and school days, the friends he'd had, and his special fondness for mathematics and science. He talked with enthusiasm of his days in the Navy. He was 17, had just graduated from high school when he was drafted in 1943. With his good engineering mind, he was a natural for radio and electronics, and after a crash course in Texas, found himself assistant radio operator on a submarine. He remembered the names of various submarines on which he had served, their missions, where they were stationed, the names of his shipmates. He remembered Morse code and was still fluent in Morse tapping and touch typing. A full and interesting early life, remembered vividly, in detail, with affection. But there, for some reason, his reminiscences stopped. He recalled and almost relived his war days in service, the end of the war, and his thoughts for the future. He had come to love the Navy, thought he might stay in it, but with the GI Bill and support, he felt he might do best to go to college. His older brother was in accountancy school and engaged to a girl, a real beauty from Oregon. With recalling, reliving, Jimmy was full of animation. He did not seem to be speaking of the past, but of the present. And I was very struck by the change of tense in his recollections as he passed from his school days to his days in the Navy. He had been using past tense, but now used the present. And it seemed to me not just the formal or fictitious present tense of recall, but the actual present tense of immediate experience. A sudden, improbable suspicion seized me. "What year is this, Mr. G?" I asked, concealing my perplexity under a casual manner. 45, man. What do you mean?" He went on. "We've won the war. FDR's dead. Truman's at the helm. There are great times ahead." "And you, Jimmy, how old would you be?" Oddly, uncertainly. He hesitated a moment, as if engaged in calculation. "Why, I guess I'm 19, Doc. I'll be 20 next birthday." Looking at the gray-haired man before me, I had an impulse for which I'd never forgiven myself. It was, or would have been, the height of cruelty had there been any possibility of Jimmy's remembering it. "Here," I said, and thrust a mirror towards him. "Look in the mirror and tell me what you see. Is that a 19-year-old looking out from the mirror?" He suddenly turned ashen and gripped the sides on the chair. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Christ, what's going on? What's happened to me? Is this a nightmare? Am I crazy? Is this a joke?" And he became frantic and panicked. "It's okay, Jimmy," I said soothingly. "It's just a mistake. Nothing to worry about." "Hey," I took him to the window. "Isn't this a lovely spring day? You see the kids there playing baseball?" He regained his color and started to smile, and I stole away, taking the hateful mirror with me. 2 minutes later, I re-entered the room. Jimmy was still standing by the window, gazing with pleasure at the kids playing baseball below. He wheeled around as I opened the door, and his face assumed a cheery expression. "Hiya, Doc," he said. "Nice morning. You want to talk to me? Do I take this chair here?" There was no sign of recognition on his frank, open face. "Haven't we met before, Mr. G?" I asked casually. "No, I can't say we have. Quite a beard you got there. I wouldn't forget you, Doc." "Why do you call me Doc?" "Well, you are a doc, ain't you?" "Yes, but if you haven't met me, how do you know what I am?" "You talk like a doc. I can see you're a doc." "Well, you're right, I am. I'm the neurologist here." "Neurologist? Hey, there's something wrong with my nerves?" "And here? Where's here? What is this place anyhow?" I was just going to ask you, where do you think you are? Well, I see these beds and these patients everywhere. Looks like a sort of hospital to me. But hell, what would I be doing in a hospital? And with all these old people, years older than me, I feel good. I'm strong as a bull. Maybe I work here? Do I work? What's my job? No, you're shaking your head. I see in your eyes that I don't work here. If I don't work here, I've been put here. Am I a patient? Am I sick and don't know it, Doc? It's crazy. It's scary. Is this some sort of joke? You don't know what the matter is. You really don't know. You remember telling me about your childhood, growing up in Connecticut, working as a radio operator on submarines, and how your brother is engaged to a girl from Oregon? Hey, you're right. But I didn't tell you that. I never met you before in my life. You must have read all about me in my chart. Okay, I said. I'll tell you a story. A man went to his doctor complaining of memory lapses. The doctor asked him some routine questions and then said, "These lapses." "What about them? What lapses?" the patient replied. "So that's my problem," Jimmy laughed. "I kind of thought it was. I do find myself forgetting things once in a while. Things that have just happened. The past is clear, though. Will you allow me to examine you, to run over some tests?" "Sure," he said genially. "Whatever you want." On intelligence testing, he showed excellent ability. He was quick-witted, observant, and logical, and had no difficulty solving complex problems and puzzles. No difficulty, that is, if they could be done quickly. If much time was required, he forgot what he was doing. He was quick and good at tic-tac-toe and checkers, and cunning and aggressive. He easily beat me. But he got lost at chess. The moves were too slow. Homing in on his memory, I found an extreme and extraordinary loss of recent memory, so that whatever was said or shown to him was apt to be forgotten in a few seconds' time. Thus I laid out my watch, my tie, and my glasses on the desk, covered them, and asked him to remember these. Then, after a minute's chat, I asked him what I put under the cover. He remembered none of them, or indeed that I had even asked him to remember. I repeated the test, this time getting him to write down the names of the 3 objects. Again, he forgot, and when I showed him the paper with his writing on it, he was astounded and said he had no recollection of writing anything down, though he acknowledged that it was his own writing, and then got a faint echo of the fact that he had written them down. He sometimes retained faint memories or some dim echo of, or sense of familiarity. Thus, 5 minutes after I had played tic-tac-toe with him, he recollected that some doctor had played this with him a while back. Whether the while back was minutes or months ago, he had no idea. He then paused and said, "It could have been you." Interesting. Sounds like me. I don't lose it that fast. I don't lose things that quickly. But some of this, sometimes retained faint memories or dim echo of some sense of familiarity. That's definitely me. 5 minutes after I had played tic-tac-toe with him, he recollected that some doctor had played this with him a while back. Whether the while back was minutes or months ago, he had no idea. He then paused and said, it could have been you." When I said it was me, he seemed amused. This faint amusement and indifference were very characteristic, as were the involved cogitations to which he was driven by being so disoriented and lost in time. When I asked Jimmy the time of the year, he would immediately look around for some clue. I was careful to remove the calendar from my desk and would work out the time of year, roughly, by looking through the window. It was not, apparently, that he failed to register in memory, but that the memory traces were fugitive in the extreme and were apt to be effaced within a minute, often less, especially if there were distracting or competing stimuli, while his intellectual and perceptual powers were preserved and highly superior. Jimmy's scientific knowledge was that of a bright high school graduate with a penchant for mathematics and science. He was superb at arithmetical, gosh darn it, and also algebraic calculations. See, why can I say the one but not the other? He was superb at arithmetical and also algebraic calculations. He was good at math, arithmetic, and algebra. He was great at calculations, but only if they could be done with lightning speed. If there were many steps, too much time involved, he would forget where he was and even the question. He knew the elements, compared them, and drew the periodic table, but omitted the transuranic elements. Is that complete? I asked when he'd finished. It's complete and up to date, sir, as far as I know. You wouldn't know any elements beyond uranium? You kidding? There's 92 elements, and uranium's the last. I paused and flipped through a National Geographic on the table. Tell me the planets, I said, and something about them. Unhesitatingly, confidently, he gave me the planets, their names, their discovery, their distance from the sun, their estimated mass, character, and gravity. What is this? I asked, showing him a photo in the magazine I was holding. It's the moon, he replied. No, it's not, I answered. It's a picture of the Earth taken from the moon. Doc, you're kidding. Someone would have had to get a camera up there, naturally. Hell, you're joking. How the hell would you do that? Unless he was a consummate actor, a fraud simulating an astonishment he did not feel, this was an utterly convincing demonstration that he was still in the past. His words, his feelings, his innocent wonder, and his struggle to make sense of what he saw were precisely those of an intelligent young man in the 1940s faced with the future, with what had not yet happened and what was scarcely imaginable. This, more than anything else, I wrote in my notes, persuades me that his cutoff around 1945 is genuine. What I showed him and told him produced the authentic amazement which it would have done in an intelligent young man of the pre-Sputnik era. I found another photo in the magazine and pushed it over to him. That's an aircraft carrier, he said. Real ultra-modern design. I never saw one quite like that. What's it called? I asked. He glanced down, looked baffled, and said, The Nimitz? Something the matter? The hell there is, he replied hotly. I know them all by name, and I don't know a Nimitz. Of course there's an Admiral Nimitz, but I never heard they named a carrier after him. Angrily, he threw the magazine down. Hi, AP. How you doing? Arithmeticals for everyone. Thank you. This one is Boo. Sweets has the stripes and polka dots, and she's on the other side. This one's Boo, the oldest. Probably haven't seen arithmetical a bunch. Yeah, not in a long time. That's another good thing about reading these books, because my mind has chunky holes in it, a lot like some of these people. I don't want to lose my words because I have a huge vocabulary. I used to read books all the time. There was always a book in my hand. Like everyone now always has a phone in their hand. I always had a book in my hand. And I haven't for years because I can't retain what I'm reading. But by doing it and reading it out loud, I find I retain more of it. So it helps. And then, yeah, I get to see all the big words and use them again and pronounce them again. So I'm not losing it. Pluto, it is a planet. Where is Brian? This should be, well, I guess no, this is more of a mighty chat anyways with the planets and stuff. Anyways, he was becoming fatigued and somewhat irritable and anxious under the continuing pressure of anomaly and contradiction and their fearful implications, to which he could not be entirely oblivious. I had already unthinkingly pushed him into panic and felt it was time to end our session. Oh, sure. Panic the heck out of the guy and then just walk away. I'd already unthinkingly pushed him into panic and felt it was time to end our session. We wandered over to the window again and looked down at the sunlit baseball diamond. As he looked, his face relaxed. He forgot the Nimitz, the satellite photo, the other horrors and hints, and became absorbed in the game below. Then, as a savory smell drifted up from the dining room, he smacked his lips. Lunch! He smiled and took his leave. And I myself was wrung with emotion. It was heartbreaking. It was absurd. It was deeply perplexing to think of his life lost in limbo and dissolving. He is, as it were, I wrote in my notes, isolated in a single moment of being, with a moat or laguna of forgetting all around him. He is a man without a past or future, stuck in a constantly changing, meaningless moment. And then, more prosaically, the remainder of the neurological examination is entirely normal. Impression, probably Korsakoff syndrome due to alcoholic degeneration of the mammillary bodies. My note was a strange mixture of facts and observations, carefully noted and itemized, with irrepressible meditations on what such problems might mean, in regard to who and what and where this poor man was. Whether, indeed, one could speak of an existence, given so absolute a privation of memory or continuity. I kept wondering, in this and later notes, unscientifically, about a lost soul, and how one might establish some continuity, some roots, for he was a man without roots, or rooted only in the remote past. Only connect. But how could he connect? And how could we help him to connect? What was life without connection? I may venture to affirm, Hume wrote, that we are nothing but a bundle or a collection of different sensations which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in perpetual flux and movement. In some sense, he had been reduced to a Humean being. I could not help thinking how fascinated Hume would have been at seeing in Jimmy his own philosophical chimera incarnate, a gruesome reduction of a man to mere disconnected, incoherent flux and change. Perhaps I could find advice or help in the medical literature, a literature which, for some reason, was largely Russian, from Korsakoff's original 1887 thesis about such cases of memory loss, which are still called Korsakoff syndrome, to the A.R. Luria's Neuropsychology of Memory, which appeared in translation only a year after I first saw Jimmy. Korsakoff wrote in 1887, "Memory of recent events is disturbed almost exclusively. Recent impressions apparently disappear soonest, whereas impressions of long ago are recalled properly, so that the patient's ingenuity, his sharpness of wit, and his resourcefulness remain largely unaffected." To Korsakoff's brilliant but spare observations, almost a century of research had been added, the richest and deepest by far being Luria's. And in Luria's account, science became poetry, and the pathos of radical lostness was evoked. Gross disturbances of the organization of impressions of events and their sequence in time can always be observed in such patients, he wrote. In consequence, they lose their integral experience of time and begin to live in a world of isolated impressions. Further, as Luria noted, the eradication of impressions and their disorder might spread backwards in time, in the most serious cases, even to relatively distant events. Most of Luria's patients, as described in this book, had massive and serious cerebral tumors, which had the same effects as Korsakoff's syndrome, but later spread and were often fatal. Luria included no cases of simple Korsakoff syndrome, based on the self-limiting destruction that Korsakoff described, neuron destruction produced by alcohol in the tiny but crucial mammillary bodies, the rest of the brain being perfectly reserved. And so there was no long-term follow-up of Luria's cases. I had I had at first been deeply puzzled and dubious, even suspicious, about the apparently sharp cutoff in 1945, a date, which was also symbolically so sharp. I wrote in a subsequent note, "There is a great blank. We do not know what happens then, or subsequently. We must fill in those missing years, from his brother or the Navy, or hospitals he has been to. Could it be that he sustained some massive trauma at this time, some massive cerebral or emotional trauma in combat, in the war, and that this may have affected him ever since? Was the war his high point, the last time he was really alive, an existence since one long anticlimax?" Author's note: in his fascinating oral history, The Good War, Studs Terkel transcribes countless stories of men and women, especially fighting men, who felt World War II was intensely real, by far the most real and significant time of their lives, and felt everything since as pallid in comparison. Such men tend to dwell on the war and to relive its battles, comradeship, moral certainties, and intensity. But this dwelling on the past and relative herbitude towards the present, this emotional dulling of current feeling and memory, is nothing like Jimmy's organic amnesia. I recently had occasion to discuss the question with Turkel. "I've met thousands of men," he told me, "who feel they've just been marking time since 1945. But I never met anyone for whom time terminated, like your amnesia, Jimmy." We did various tests on him, EEG, brain scans, and found no evidence of massive brain damage, although atrophy of the tiny mammillary bodies would not show up on such tests. We received reports from the Navy indicating that he had remained in the Navy until 1965 and that he was perfectly competent at that time. Then we turned up a short, nasty report from Bellevue Hospital dated 1971 saying that he was totally disoriented with an advanced organic brain syndrome due to alcohol. Cirrhosis had also developed by this time. From Bellevue, he was sent to a wretched dump in the village, a so-called nursing home, whence he was rescued, lousy, starving, by our home in 1975. We located his brother, whom Jimmy always spoke of as being in accountancy school and engaged to a girl from Oregon. In fact, he had married the girl from Oregon, had become a father and grandfather, and had been practicing accountant for 30 years. Where we had hoped for an abundance of information and feeling from his brother, we received a courteous but somewhat meager letter. It was obvious from reading this, especially reading between the lines, that the brothers had scarcely seen each other since 1943, had gone separate ways, partly through the vicissitudes of location and profession, and partly through deep, though not estranging, differences of temperament. Jimmy, it seemed, had never settled down, was happy-go-lucky and always a drinker. The Navy, his brother felt, provided a structure, a life, and the real problem started when he left it in 1965. Without his habitual structure and anchor, Jimmy had ceased to work, gone to pieces, and started to drink heavily. There had been some memory impairment of the Korsakoff type in the middle and especially the late 1960s, but not so severe that Jimmy couldn't cope in this nonchalant fashion. But his drinking grew heavier in 1970. Hello, Christine. Good to see you. Oh, do you what? You can tell us a few stories about Bellevue, eh? That would be interesting, actually. Um, the family home, or what I consider the family home, was literally a 5-minute walk from from Riverview. Riverview was the big mental hospital in BC on our side of the country. And just another 5, maybe 10-minute walk from Riverview Hospital, across the highway and down by the dikes. That's where we have the criminally insane hospital. I can't remember what it's called. They're both still there. The criminally insane hospital is still in use. Still houses criminally insane people. Riverview was closed down in the 90s, and it was used for filming for a long time. And I have no idea what they're doing now. They talked about bringing it back to use as office buildings or something, but the whole property is phenomenal. There's little cabins out, somewhat separate from others, but still on the property, that staff members would live in. I had a buddy of mine, his mom worked at Riverview for a long time, and allegedly she met the man who took so much acid that he was afraid he was an orange, and he was very scared that someone was going to peel him. And he lived in Riverview. He was one of the long-term people housed there. We all heard the rumors about him, but their mom, because I was friends with both of them, their mom actually worked there and had seen him, had interacted with him. So that was pretty cool. We thought it was just a "don't do acid, kids" kind of a story, but in fact, he does exist, or he did at that time. Got pulled over by the philosopher for driving 72 in a 55. I believe that's faster than us. I don't know. I can't even remember now. I used to have a car that had miles, not clicks. We say ain't a lot. Yes. Yes. Ain't, y'all, all the slangies. No, he actually thought he was an orange, like the fruit that you peel and eat, and it comes in wedges. He thought he was an orange, and his ginormous fear was that someone was going to come in and try to peel him. That's it. I don't know. I don't know what you do to treat that. I don't know whatever happened to the guy when they closed the hospital down. I don't know. I just know that he really did exist. So didn't stop us from doing huge amounts of acid, though. Anyways, but his drinking grew heavier in 1970. So around Christmas of that year, his brother understood he had suddenly blown his top and become deliriously excited and confused, and it was at this point he had been taken into Bellevue. During the next month, the excitement and delirium died down, but he was left with deep and bizarre memory lapses, or deficits, to use the medical jargon. His brother had visited him at the time. They had not met for 20 years, and to his horror, Jimmy not only failed to recognize him, but said, "Stop joking. You're old enough to be my father. My brother's a young man just going through accountancy school." But when I received this information, I was more perplexed still. Why did Jimmy not remember his later years in the Navy? Why did he not recall and organize his memories until 1970? I had not heard then that such patients might have a retrograde amnesia. See postscript, we will. I wonder increasingly, I wrote at this time, whether there is not an element of hysterical or fugal amnesia, whether he is not in flight from something too awful to recall. And I suggested he be seen by our psychiatrist. Her report was searching and detailed. The examination had included a sodium amytal test, calculated to release any memories which might be repressed. She also attempted to hypnotize Jimmy in the hope of eliciting memories repressed by hysteria, This tends to work well in cases of hysterical amnesia, but it failed because Jimmy could not be hypnotized, not because of any resistance, but because of his extreme amnesia. He can't remember that he's being hypnotized. That's interesting. That's very interesting. But it failed because Jimmy could not be hypnotized, not because of any resistance, but because of his extreme amnesia, which caused him to lose track of what the hypnotist was saying. Dr. Mark Homanoff, 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 Homanoff. Hello, Eileen. How you doing, hon? Good to see you. Tropicana wants to know his location. Yeah. Dr. Mark Homanoff, who worked on the amnesia ward at the Boston Veterans Administration Hospital, tells me of similar experiences and of his feeling that this is absolutely characteristic of patients with Korsakoff's as opposed to patients with hysterical amnesia. I have no feeling or evidence, the psychiatrist wrote, of any hysterical or put on deficit. He lacks both the means and the motive to make a facade. His memory deficits are organic and permanent and incorrigible, though it is puzzling that they should go back so long. Since she felt he was unconcerned and manifested no special anxiety, he constituted no management problem. There was nothing she could offer or any therapeutic entrance or lever she could see. At this point, persuaded that this was indeed pure Korsakoff's, uncomplicated by other factors, emotional or organic, I wrote to Luria and asked his opinion. He spoke in his reply of his patient Belle, whose amnesia had retroactively eradicated 10 years. He wrote about this patient in The Neuropsychology of Memory. He said he saw no reason why such a retrograde amnesia should not thrust backwards decades or almost a whole lifetime. I can only wait for the final amnesia, Bunel writes, the one that can erase an entire life. But Jimmy's amnesia, for whatever reason, had erased memory and time back to 1945, roughly, and then stopped. Occasionally he would recall something much later, but the recall was fragmentary and dislocated in time. Once, seeing the word satellite in a newspaper headline, he said offhandedly that he'd been involved in a project of satellite tracking while on the ship Chesapeake Bay, a memory fragment coming from the early or mid-60s. But for all practical purposes, his cutoff point was during the mid or late 1940s, and anything subsequently retrieved was fragmentary and unconnected. This was the case in 1975, and it is still the case now, 9 years later. What could we do, and what should we do? There are no prescriptions, Luria wrote, in a case like this. Do whatever your ingenuity and your heart suggest. There is little or no hope of any recovery in his memory, but a man does not consist of memory alone. He has feeling, will, sensibilities, moral being, matters of which neuropathy and neuropsychology cannot speak. And it is here, beyond the realm of an impersonal psychology, that you may find ways to touch him and change him. And the circumstances of your work especially allow this, for you work in a home, which is like a little world, quite different from the clinics and institutions where I work. Neuropsychologically, there is little or nothing you can do, but in the realm of the individual, there may be much you can do. Luria mentioned his patient cure as manifesting a rare self-awareness, in which hopelessness was mixed with an odd equanimity. I have no memory of the present, Kerr would say. I do not know what I have just done or from where I have just come. I can recall my past very well, but I have no memory of my present. When asked whether he had ever seen the person testing him, he said, I cannot say yes or no. I can neither affirm nor deny that I have seen you. This was sometimes the case with Jimmy, and like Kerr, who stayed many months in the same hospital, Jimmy began to form a sense of familiarity. He slowly learned his way around the home, the whereabouts of the dining room, his own room, the elevators at the stairs, and in some sense recognized some of the staff, although he confused them, and perhaps had to do so, with people from the past. He soon became fond of the nursing sister in the home. He recognized her voice, her footfalls immediately, but would always say that she had been a fellow pupil in his high school and was greatly surprised when I addressed her as sister. "Gee," he exclaimed, "the damnedest things happen. I'd never guessed you'd become a religious sister." Since he's been at her home, that is, since early 1975, Jimmy has never been able to identify anyone in it consistently. The only person he truly recognizes is his brother whenever he visits from Oregon. These meetings are deeply emotional and moving to observe. The only truly emotional meetings Jimmy has. He loves his brother, he recognizes him, but cannot understand why he looks so old. "Guess some people age fast," he says. Actually, his brother looks much younger than his age and has the sort of face and build that change little with the years. These are true meetings, Jimmy's only connection of past and present, yet they do nothing to provide any sense of history or continuity. If anything, they emphasize, at least to his brother and to others who see them together, that Jimmy still lives, is fossilized in the past. All of us at first had high hopes of helping Jimmy. He was so personable, so likable, so quick and intelligent, it was difficult to believe that he might be beyond help. But none of us had ever encountered or even imagined such a power of amnesia, the possibility of a pit into which everything, every experience, every event would fathomlessly drop, a bottomless memory hole that would engulf the whole world. I suggested when I first saw him that he should keep a diary and be encouraged to keep notes every day of his experiences, his feelings, thoughts, memories, and reflections. These attempts were foiled at first by his continually losing the diary. It had to be attached to him somehow. But this too failed to work. He dutifully kept a brief daily notebook, but could not recognize his earlier entries in it. He does recognize his own writing and style, and is always astounded to find that he wrote something the day before. Astounded and indifferent, for he was a man who, in effect, had no day before. His entries remained unconnected and unconnecting, and had no power to provide any sense of time or continuity. Moreover, they were trivial: eggs for breakfast, watched ball game on TV, and never touched the depths. But were there depths in this unmemoried man? Depths of an abiding feeling and thinking? Or had he been reduced to a sort of Humean drivel, a mere succession of unrelated impressions and events? Jimmy both was and wasn't aware of this deep, tragic loss of himself. If a man had lost a leg or an eye, he knows he has lost a leg or an eye. But if he has lost a self, himself, he cannot know it because he is no longer there to know it. Therefore, I could not question him intellectually about such matters. He had originally professed bewilderment at finding himself amid patients, when, as he said, he himself didn't feel ill. But what, he wondered, did he feel? He was strongly built and fit. He had a sort of animal strength and energy, but also a strange inertia, a passivity, and, as everyone remarked, an unconcern. He gave all of us an overwhelming sense of something missing, although this, if he realized it, was itself accepted with an odd unconcern. One day I asked him not about his memory or past, but about the simplest and most elemental feelings of all. "How do you feel?" "How do I feel?" he repeated, and scratched his head. "Cannot say I feel ill. but I cannot say I feel well. Cannot say I feel anything at all. Are you miserable? I continued. Can't say that I am. Do you enjoy life? Can't say that I do. I hesitated, fearing that I was going too far, that I might be stripping a man down to some hidden, unacknowledgeable, unbearable despair. You don't enjoy life, I repeated, hesitating somewhat. How then do you feel about life? I can't say that I feel anything at all. You feel alive, though? Feel alive? Not really. Haven't felt alive in a very long time. His face wore a look of infinite sadness and resignation. Later, having noted his aptitude for and pleasure in quick games and puzzles, and their power to hold him, at least while they lasted, and to allow for a while a sense of companionship and competition, he had not complained of loneliness, but he looked so alone. He never expressed sadness, but he looked so sad. I suggested he be brought into our recreation programs at the home. This worked better than the diary. He would become keenly and briefly involved in games, but soon they ceased to offer any challenge. He solved all the puzzles and could solve them easily, and he was far better and sharper than anyone else at games. And as he found this out, he grew fretful and restless again, and wandered the corridors, uneasy and bored with a sense of indignity. The games and puzzles were for children, a diversion. Clearly, passionately, he wanted something to do. He wanted to do, to be, and to feel. And he could not. He wanted sense, he wanted purpose. In Freud's words, work and love. Could he do ordinary work? He had gone to pieces, his brother said, when he ceased to work in 1965. He had two striking skills, Morse code and touch typing. We could not use Morse unless we invented a use, but good typing we could use if he could recover his old skills. And this would be real work, not just a game. Jimmy soon did recover his old skill and came to type very quickly. He could not do it slowly, and found in this some of the challenge and satisfaction of a job. But this was still superficial tapping and typing. It was trivial. It did not reach the depths. And what he typed mechanically. He could not hold the thought, the short sentences following one another in a meaningless order. One tended to speak of him instinctively as a spiritual casualty, a lost soul. Was it possible that he had really been desouled by the disease? Do you think he has a soul? I once asked the sisters. They were outraged by my question, but could see why I asked it. Watch Jimmy in the chapel, they said, and judge for yourself. I did, and I was moved, profoundly moved and impressed, because I saw here an intensity and steadiness of attention and concentration that I'd never seen before in him or conceived him capable of. I watched him kneel and take the sacrament on his tongue and could not doubt the fullness and totality of communion, the perfect alignment of his spirit with the spirit of the Mass. Fully, intensely, quietly, in the quietude of absolute concentration and attention, he entered and partook of the Holy Communion. He was wholly held, absorbed by a feeling. There was no forgetting, no Korsakovs then, nor did it seem possible or imaginable that there should be, for he was no longer at the mercy of a faulty and fallible mechanism, that of meaningless sequences and memory traces, but was absorbed in an act of his whole being, which carried feeling and meaning in an organic continuity and unity so seamless it could not permit any break. Clearly, Jimmy found continuity and reality in the absoluteness of spiritual attention and act. The sisters were right. He did find his soul here. And so was Luria, whose words now came back to me. A man does not consist of memory alone. He has feeling, will, sensibility, moral being. It is here. You may touch him and you may see a profound change. Memory, mental activity, mind alone could not hold him, but moral attention and action could hold him completely. But perhaps moral was too narrow a word, for the aesthetic and dramatic were equally involved. Seeing Jimmy in the chapel opened my eyes to other realms where the soul is called on and held and stilled in attention and communion. The same depth of absorption and attention was to be seen in relation to music and art. He had no difficulty, I noticed, following music or simple dramas, for every moment in music and art contains other moments. He liked gardening and had taken over some of the work in our garden. At first, he greeted the garden each day anew, but for some reason, this had become more familiar to him than the inside of the home. He almost never got lost or disoriented in the garden now. He patterned it, I think, on loved and remembered gardens from his youth in Connecticut. Jimmy, who was so lost in extensional spatial time, that makes more sense. Jimmy, who was so lost in extensional spatial time, was perfectly organized in Bergsonian intentional time. What was fugitive, unsustainable as formal structure was perfectly stable, perfectly held as art or will. Moreover, there was something that endured and survived. If Jimmy was briefly held by a task or puzzle or game or calculation, held in the purely mental challenge of these, he would fall apart as soon as they were done into the abyss of his nothingness, his amnesia. But if he was held in emotional and spiritual attention, in the contemplation of nature or art, in listening to music, in taking part of the Mass and chapel, the attention, or its mood, its quietude, would persist for a while, and there would be in him a pensiveness and peace we rarely, if ever, saw during the rest of his life at the home. I have known Jimmy now for 9 years, and neuropsychologically he has not changed in the least. He still has the severest, most devastating Korsakoffs, cannot remember isolated items for more than a few seconds, and has a dense amnesia going back to 1945. But humanly, spiritually, he is at times a different man altogether, no longer fluttering, restless, bored, and lost, but deeply attentive to the beauty and soul of the world. Rich in all the Kierkegaardian categories, an aesthetic, the moral, the religious, and the dramatic. I had wondered when I first met him if he was not condemned to a sort of Humean froth, a meaningless fluttering on the surface of life, and whether there was any way of transcending the incoherence of his Humean disease. Humean disease. Empirical science told me there was not. But empiricism, takes no account of the soul, no account of what constitutes and determines personal being. Perhaps there is a philosophical as well as a clinical lesson here, that in Korsakoffs, or dementia, or other such catastrophes, however great the organic damage and human dissolution, there remains the undiminished possibility of reintegration by art, by communion, by touching the human spirit. And this can be preserved in what seems at first a hopeless state of neurological devastation. The postscript. I now know that retrograde amnesia to some degree is very common, if not universal, in cases of Korsakoffs. The classical Korsakoff syndrome, a profound and permanent but pure devastation of memory caused by alcoholic destruction of the mammillary bodies, is rare, even among very heavy drinkers. One may, of course, see Korsakoff syndrome with other pathologies, as in Luria's patients with tumors. A particularly fascinating case of an acute and mercifully transient Korsakoff syndrome has been well described only very recently in the so-called transient global amnesia, which may occur with migraines, head injuries, or impaired blood supply to the brain. Here, for a few minutes or hours, a severe and singular amnesia may occur, even though the patient may continue to drive a car or perhaps to carry on medical or editorial duties in a mechanical way. But under this fluency lies a profound amnesia. Every sentence uttered being forgotten as soon as it is said, everything forgotten within a few minutes of being seen, though long established memories and routines may be perfectly preserved. Some remarkable videotapes of patients during TGAs have recently, as of 1986, been made by Dr. John Hodges at Oxford. Further, there may be a profound retrograde amnesia in such cases. My colleague, Dr. Leon Protas, tells me of a case he saw recently in which a highly intelligent man was unable for some hours to remember his wife or children, to remember that he had a wife or children. In effect, he lost 30 years of his life, though fortunately for only a few hours. Recovery from such attacks is prompt and complete, yet they are, in a sense, the most horrifying of little strokes in their power absolutely to annul or obliterate decades of richly lived, richly achieving, and richly memoried life. The horror typically is only felt by others. The patient, unaware, amnesiac for his amnesia, may continue what he is doing, quite unconcerned, and only discover later that he lost not only a day, as in common with ordinary alcoholic blackouts, but half a lifetime and never knew it. The fact that one can lose the greater part of a lifetime has peculiar, uncanny horror. In adulthood, higher life, may be brought to a premature end by strokes, senility, brain injuries, etc. But there usually remains the consciousness of life lived, of one's past. This is usually felt as a sort of compensation. At least I lived fully, tasting life to the full, before I was brain injured, stricken, etc. The sense of the life lived before, which may be either a consolation or a torment, is precisely what is taken away in retrograde amnesia. The final amnesia, the one that can erase an entire life, that Brunel speaks of, may occur, perhaps, in a terminal dementia, but not, in my experience, suddenly, in consequence to a stroke. But there is a different yet comparable sort of amnesia which can occur suddenly, different in that it is not global, but modality specific. Thus, in one patient under my care, a sudden thrombosis in the posterior circulation of the brain caused the immediate death of the visual parts of his brain. Forthwith, this patient became completely blind, but did not know it. He looked blind, but he made no complaints. Questioning and testing showed, beyond a doubt, that not only was he centrally or cortically blind, but he had lost all visual images and memories, lost them totally. Yet he had no sense of that loss. Indeed, he had lost the very idea of seeing, and was not only unable to describe anything visually, but bewildered when I used words such as seeing and light. He had become, in essence, a non-visual being. His entire lifetime of seeing, of visuality, had in effect been stolen. His whole visual life had, indeed, been erased, and erased permanently in the instant of his stroke. Such a visual amnesia, and, so to speak, blindness to the blindness, amnesia for the amnesia, is in effect a total Korsakoff's, confined to the visuality. A still more limited, but nonetheless total amnesia may be displayed with regard to particular forms of perception, as in the previous chapter, the man who mistook his wife for a hat. There was an absolute prosopagnosia, or agnosia, of faces. Dr. P was not only unable to recognize faces, but unable to imagine or remember any faces. He had indeed lost the very idea of a face, as my more afflicted patient had lost the very ideas of seeing or light. Such syndromes were described by Gabriel Anton in the 1890s, but the implication of these syndromes, Korsakov's and Anton's, what they entail and must entail for the world, the lives, and the identities of affected patients, has been scarcely touched even to this day. In Jimmy's case, we had sometimes wondered how he might respond if taken back to his hometown, in effect to his pre-amnesia days. But the little town in Connecticut had become a booming city with the years. Later, I did have occasion to find out what might happen in such circumstances, though this was with another patient with Korsakov's, Stephen R., who had become acutely ill in 1980 and whose retrograde amnesia went back only 2 years or so. With this patient, who also had severe seizures, spasticity, and other problems necessitating inpatient care, rare weekend visits to his home revealed a poignant situation. In hospital, he could recognize nobody and nothing, and was in almost ceaseless frenzy of disorientation. But when his wife took him home to his house, which was in effect a time capsule of his pre-amnesia days, he felt instantly at home. He recognized everything, tapped the barometer, checked the thermostat, took his favorite armchair as he used to do. He spoke of neighbors, shops, the local pub, a nearby cinema, as they had been in the mid-70s. He was distressed and puzzled if the smallest changes were made in the house. "You changed the curtains today," he once expostulated to his wife. "How come? So suddenly. They were green this morning." But they had not been green since 1978. He recognized most of the neighboring houses and shops. They had changed little between 78 and 83, but was bewildered by the replacement of the cinema. How could they tear it down and put up a supermarket overnight? He recognized friends and neighbors, but found them oddly older than he expected. "Old so-and-so, he's really showing his age. Never noticed it before. How come everyone's showing their age today?" But the real poignancy, the horror, would occur when his wife brought him in a fantastic and unaccountable manner, so he felt, to a strange home that he had never seen, full of strangers, and then left him. "What are you doing?" he would scream, terrified and confused. "What in the hell is this place? What the hell's going on?" These scenes were almost unbearable to watch, and must have seemed like madness or nightmare to the patient. Mercifully, perhaps, he would forget them within a couple of minutes. Such patients fossilized in the past can only be at home, oriented in the past. Time for them had come to a stop. I hear Stephen R. screaming with terror and confusion when he returns, screaming for a past which no longer exists. But what can we do? Can we create a time capsule of fiction? Never have I known a patient so confronted, so tormented by anachronism, unless it was Rose R. of Awakenings. See Incontinent Nostalgia. Jimmy had reached a sort of calm. William, from chapter 12, continually confabulates, but Stephen R. has a gaping time wound, an agony that will never heal. After writing and publishing this history, I embarked with Dr. Elkonen Goldberg, a pupil of Luria and editor of the original Russian edition of the Neuropsychology of Memory, on a close and systematic neuropsychological study of this patient Dr. Goldberg has presented. It's a good thing I'm done because my eye is really bugging me. At least I know there's a problem now. Let's try this again. After writing and publishing this history, I embarked with Dr. Elkonen Goldberg, a pupil of Luria and editor of the original Russian edition of the Neuropsychology of Memory, on a close and systematic neuropsychological study of this patient. Dr. Goldberg has presented some of the preliminary findings at conferences, and we hope in due course to publish a full account. A deeply moving and extraordinary film about a patient with a profound amnesia called Prisoner of Consciousness, made by Dr. Jonathan Miller, has just been shown in England as of September 1986. A film has also been made by Hilary Lawson with a prosopagnosis patient with many similarities to Dr. P. Such films are crucial to assist the imagination. What can be shown cannot be said. And that's the end of chapter 2. Hello, Helen. How you doing? Very late, but you won't be long. Okay, well, thank you so much for stopping in, Helen. I love seeing you pop up. Oh, I see my MJ showed up. You're getting another migraine. Okay, yeah. Take it easy now before you trigger it too bad. Maybe you can get rid of it before it hits full on. Okay, they're talking about Rumble. So the Switch 2 is announced. It's a slightly disappointing announcement so far, though. Okay. I know Mr. Q was curious. Did Mr. Q stop in? I don't know. I think he'd stopped in last night, not today. Mr. Q was looking at all that in the Switch. Hit the like button. There's Helen. It's very late. She's saying hello. Linda, hello. Sorry I'm late. Sorry your eye is bugging you. That's okay. We finished the chapter. That was chapter 2. From The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. It was very interesting. Rather sad. I totally recognized myself in the blackout drunk syndrome. That's what happens to me. There's a reason I decided not to drink very often anymore. Because that's what I would do. I would, for all intents and purposes, people looking at me just see me. I'm fully functioning. I can hold conversations. I can stand up, sit down, fight. No one would know that I am not there. Or rather, I guess I am there in the moment. But as soon as that moment is done, it's gone. And I don't remember it. And in my worst times when I was drinking, it was only upon waking up. I couldn't remember. I would never remember. But I always woke up with a sense of dread or sadness or, relaxed when bad things didn't happen. Because, just because you're blackout drunk doesn't mean that bad stuff is going to happen. If it did, then I wouldn't have done it as many times. But that's it. For all intents and purposes, I wasn't there and I didn't experience any of that. And so there is zero memory of what we were doing or saying or anything, where we went, what we did. It's all gone. Yeah, it's all gone. And there were some other things too. The way he discussed it, like names and plots of stories and stuff. I mix them all up in my head. I only get little bits and pieces, and I try and connect those dots, make those connections, but it doesn't necessarily happen. Like right now, I'm talking with someone a lot who's filling me in on the lore of different universes and characters, and from movie and anime and video games. And it's awesome, and it's so interesting, but only a few things ever stick, and then I've got to try and take the things that did stick and fit it into whatever story they're talking about and try and figure out, do I remember this story or do I just remember the parts that he told me about before? I mix up movies all the time. It gets very confusing. That's why I say it's like 50 first dates for me with movies and books. I can watch a movie a zillion times, but as long as there's been enough of a time period between the last time I watched it and the next time, it's basically like watching a brand new movie again. I don't remember. I really don't. I've also taken to staying up and watching movies that have been mentioned in the conversation. I've done that a couple of times now. Yeah, 2 or 3 movies that I've watched because they came up in conversation and I was sure I had seen them, but I couldn't remember what they were about or what went on. So I'd stay up late and watch them after, just so that I can get them more solidly in my memory, so I can keep it separate from the other things. But yeah, that is the fun of my brain. Linda's saying, unfortunately, I never blacked out. I have those ugly memories. Yeah, I can't remember them, but my goodness, I felt them when I did something I was very ashamed of, or what have you. That shame was so dark and so deep. It was awful because it was worse because I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what had gone on. And so I could only imagine, right? And since I have no idea of what really went on, I can imagine all sorts of horrible stuff. So, yeah, it's fun and it's not fun, but you do what you can with what you got, right? So in the meantime, thank you so much. That was chapter 2. We'll be back next Thursday for chapter 3, 11 a.m. my time, Pacific. You guys can all do your own maths, adding however many hours you need to. In the meantime, you will, of course, see me on Shenny's Saturday night game night. And we've got the Sunday just sitting around talking to you guys. So, yeah, don't forget about us. We'll see you Saturday night for game night. And until then, you guys have a good time. Have a great day. Bye now.
She's a curious canuck, always digging for the truth, searching in the night, youthful heart and proof. With her shovel